All right, I am back in my happy place, and let's keep working on this floor. So where I left off, I've got the back secured with some screws. There are a couple of gaps that I've shown last video, and we're kind of up against on the side there for the most part, but a gap along the passenger side and kind of the big area. You can see the shadow there, but the radius of this tunnel is just a little wider or a little different, more sharp in the corner, and then it comes down to meet. So what I'm going to do to start off with is loosen up these screws that I have just at the top here and begin by kind of rough bending here along this edge to just see if I can smooth this out a little bit more and get a little bit of spread there. Someone had suggested taking it back out and reshaping it for a few reasons. I think I'm gonna, unless I absolutely have to, I'm not gonna do that. The first reason is, if you saw the last video, it is such a pain getting this in and out, especially with just me working in the garage. But the second reason is it's just going to be easier to follow the contour, and honestly, every time I move it in and out, I have to bend and warp it to fit it through the door hole. So really, I want to have it in place and see what I can do, just bending it in place and see if I can get it close enough. If I can't, then I'll reassess and kind of go through the hassle of taking it back out again. Okay, I have been fiddling around with this for a bit, and I think I've come to a little bit of a conclusion. If you saw the gap on the passenger side and look over here, here is the driver's side. We're actually all the way up against in the corner, which is great. I've been fiddling around and kind of reshaping this, and it's closing the gap over there. But one thing I'm noticing is as I move things back around, it's all just impacting everything else. Even with it screwed in place, it's sliding a little under the screws as I try to reshape it. I don't think I'm going to get anything in place really, or I don't think I'm going to be able to reshape it just being held with a couple of clamps and a couple of screws. I know obviously we're tight up against here, and there's enough slack. You can see the shadow of it, but there's enough slack on here that I should be able to make up that excess over there. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a screw, kind of maybe a few screws along here, and start from passenger side and go that way. And I'm going to avoid starting welding yet. We're going to see if we can get this all reshaped without welding, and just kind of do probably more screws than I normally would and try to hug this transmission tunnel as close as I can and reshape as I go along. And put screw maybe every 2 or 3 weld holes just to push the slack, for lack of a better term, that way to make up the gap. Then once that's kind of in place, I've got some pieces of wood that I might be using, or some angle iron, and clamp it to the rockers so that I know that I'm perfectly flat along that lip there on both sides. So on the other side, I'll probably clamp it underneath against the pinch weld just so I make sure that the floor is nice and straight. If you see if I can show you this upside down, there's a lot of play right now, and where it is up and down, and I want to make sure that it's nice and level and doesn't have a nice dip in the middle or raise or anything. So moving along to the back, things are looking really good there. Yeah, this is almost flush against almost everywhere, and the places that aren't, you can kind of tell as you do this, you know, what is hammerable and what actually needs to be reshaped. I think except for a couple of spots where we're to the point where we can just flatten as we go along. So I'm really happy there. The other thing is these little wings. Hang on, let me reposition, see if I can show you. There's a vertical on these wings here that meets up against this pinch weld for the rear torque boxes, and that is up against, so it's essentially as far forward as it can go. It's not, there's nowhere else that it can slide back and forth. It is kind of where it's going to be. So the back is pretty well defined, and the sides, I just need to make sure it's straight. This transition tunnel is kind of the big one. So yeah, I'm gonna get going, start from this side and go that way and see how close I can get to it. And if everything lines up nicely, hopefully without using 200 different screws, then we might be in a point to start welding. Okay, I have fiddled, I think, about as much as I should. I've got my ratchet strap back on here just to make sure my rockers are parallel again. The back, as we've said before, is looking great. Things are kind of tightened up at the front, except obviously what we talked about already. At this point, I'm just going around and moving things around a little bit. What I'm going to do, because the back looks great and I know there's nothing else that I'm going to do there that's going to impact anything, I'm going to start welding at the back. And I'll probably get the back against the transition panel and then along all the way to the torque boxes, etc. And I'm going to not do against the rocker yet. I don't know if you can tell on the video, but it still has a little bit of a dip there. I want the back defined and in place. And then what I'll do on both sides is make sure that the floor is absolutely straight. I've been playing around with a few different things under here and clamping different pieces of wood just so I can get it in place. And until everything's secure at the back and secure at the front, I'm really just moving things around and chasing it. So I'm going to secure the back, weld it in place, and then get the sides against the rocker exactly where they need to, and then weld the sides before tackling the front again. So that is the plan. I think, yeah, I'm just chasing things around. I'm not making any more progress putting things where they need to be. So let's go ahead and I'm a little nervous, but let's go ahead and start welding in some metal. So one thing that was happening to me partway through welding the back of the floor, my welding helmet, I kept cutting out, and I'd be fine for a weld and then it'd start flashing me. It wasn't dimming. So I was thinking, oh, the battery died. So I went and I replaced it with a fresh battery in the unit here, and it would work and then stop working again. And I was getting really frustrated. Luckily for me, I've never been super thrilled with this welding helmet. It just never kind of fit comfortably. And then with the respirator on, it never went down over the cartridges quite right. So I'd wind up, it'd be several inches away from my face. So just kind of narrowed my field of view. So I wasn't thrilled with it. And I had picked up the just one that I hadn't gotten to until now. It's a Yes welder, controls right on the side. I didn't plan to break into this right away, but I'm sure glad I did. I am so much happier with this. It is way more comfortable. It's very convenient having the controls accessible instead of inside of the mask if you want to adjust anything. And it fits right over my cartridges on my respirator. So I've got the shield right up against my face where it should be. I've got full field of view. I should have done this a long time ago. Yeah, super thrilled. Okay, I've got the back edge welded up and then welded down the rear frames and at the back right over where the leaf springs mount. There's a flat spot there, so I got it welded down. We've talked about this gap before. right there, or I'm probably gonna have to make an L for it. That didn't spread out any further, didn't expect it to. It's not as bad over there, but I'll probably have to do the same over there. That is minor, I'm not concerned with that. But it's late enough in the day, we're going to pick this up tomorrow morning, right where we left off. And next is to weld, finish along the torque boxes and then here, and then really clamp along the sides and get those to exactly the right height, so it's a nice straight line all the way across to the firewall. Okay, it's the morning. We're back in. Let's finish up around these torque boxes here on both sides, and then we'll start aligning the sides against the rockers. I'll obviously move my ratchet strap there so I'm not welding around it. Let's get going. Okay, I've got both sides up to the front of the torque box welded in. The contours were a little bit of a challenge. Passenger side, not so bad. There was a little bit of a gap here, so I actually used my ball peen hammer and actually stretched the metal out and made it conform. It'll thin the metal a little bit, but I'm not that worried about it. I'd rather have it flush without a nice gap there that I'd have to fill somehow later. The driver's side was a little more tricky. Let me see if I can show you. Okay, it was lining up here and lining up here, but just the shape of the torque box from here to here, it was the torque box was lower than this little raised area of floor. So that's one of those things where I wasn't going to be able to tell until it was in there and everything was started laying in that I could see how it was. But so yeah, a little hammer and 2x4 action, really just to flatten out this crease a little bit. And it's lying pretty nicely. So yeah, I'm pretty happy so far. Yeah, like I've said, next we're working on the sides and try to get that all level. One other thing, there were a couple of welds that did not penetrate all the way down into the torque box. And when I started hammering to smooth things out, they actually popped loose, which I wasn't thrilled about. But I did go through and drill those back out and re-weld, and now they're nice and solid. Okay, I am test fitting, trying to get this edge straight from front to back, not necessarily level, because I know the car front to back, I never leveled it out, just got the relative measurements. So let me show you what I'm doing here. And feel free to let me know if there's a better way to do this. So I have, it's going to be hard to see, but right here, a strip of wood that I've just clamped in a few places, and I'm using that as essentially a lower point. So if I need to raise a part of the floor up, I'll just tap on it with a hammer. It's got the clamps just providing enough friction to hold it so I can adjust it up and down where I need it to be. And I've also got, hindsight, I probably should have bought 15 more of these, but I've got one of my little RV jacks here, just pushing up. There was that dent in the floor, that kind of crease. So pushing up on that to help keep it level. And then up top side, let's see if I can give you a good angle on this. I put sheet metal screw here, so I know that we are flush with the firewall. Sorry. And some crazy camera angles, we're welded in here. So I know it's flush with the rear torque box. So theoretically, if we're flat here, we're flat at the front, as long as I get this from front to back nice and straight, and we're just about there. I'll just kind of press everything in place where it will be. It should be good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and just keep fiddling with it for a little bit, and at yeah, when I'm all done with that, we're going to start welding. And I think what I'm going to do is weld just one side and then go to the other side. Yeah, it's just gonna be a lot easier that way. And I think I showed you this before, but with the spreading I had done, this gap is all but closed up. And I have a clamp, just one of my large clamps I had around here with a piece of wood so I didn't damage anything, just kind of pulled it in. So I'm really happy with that. What else? So I did do a test fit. You may have seen on the time lapse test fit with the seat risers. And I have options. I've got these EDP coated seat risers that came with the floor pan, and I already knew I was going to do something with these. So I bought a pair of Dynacorn seat risers. Honestly, the stampings are almost exactly the same. We've got the thickness of the metal's the same. They both have the reinforcement. Let me see if I can show you the reinforcement on the underside there. I don't know which one I'm going to use yet, and honestly I can decide later. Dimensionally they're almost exactly the same as well, so we'll see. These have been in storage with the car, so they got nice and dirty. Not that big of a deal. They can easily be cleaned up, and they do have the weld through primer that came from the factory. One other thing to note, the driver's side floor pan we'll get there. The driver's side seat riser sits pretty flush against the floor, and I can see the witness marks of where the old one was, and it lines up pretty decently. The passenger side, however, there's always something. Passenger side, it is almost flush against the rocker front and back, but then just kind of where it lands on the transmission tunnel. Let me see if I can get you a good angle on this. Maybe the other one would have been easier to show, but here we're at the floor support and I can get my fingertips in all the way over here and get my whole hand in there. So it's contacting a little early. And I checked it with a laser level. I've got a little laser level, and I checked kind of if it was sitting level or not, and it certainly is not. So this is the same size, so this will have to be done regardless of which seat riser I go with. But what will probably need to happen is either the shape of this transmission tunnel needs to change to allow it to sit down a little better, or the flanges that touch the transmission tunnel need to be modified, bent or cut to let it sit down to where it needs to be. That's a problem for another day. And honestly, once we get the sides in, that'll tell us a lot more of what it looks like and what we'll have to do to fix this. Okay, I've got my laser level along here lined up with, let me point for you, lined up with the back of that flange and the front of the flange. And what I'm going to do, I got it pretty darn close, within 1/8 of an inch or less all the way along. What I'm going to do is start, it's probably the worst visual that you're getting because I'm doing this backwards. Probably going to start at the back, and as I go along, manipulate the floor, maybe in sections, maybe a foot at a time, just to make sure we're right along the correct line there. Yeah, I'm really hesitant. I keep fiddling and going back and forth, kind of similar to starting the welding. At some point, I'm just going to have to do it. Yeah, the old saying, nothing to it but to do it. So let's go ahead and get started and hope I'm not grinding welds imminently. Okay, it's worth mentioning I was full respirator underneath my welding helmet. Kind of similar to those rear frame rails, your inner rockers are galvanized. Welding to galvanized releases some nasty stuff. So if you're doing this, protect yourself. I had a fan going just to circulate the air, an exhaust fan on the ceiling to suck out all the smoke and everything else, and cracked my garage door just to get some fresh air moving along. And then once it was all said and done, I went and took a break and let the garage air out before coming back out. Okay, both sides. We got all up against the rocker on both sides, welded up. Super stoked. They lined up pretty nicely once I adjusted everything. So on this side, what I had done, this piece of wood is just for the strap there. Let me see if you can see. Yeah, maybe not. I took 2 of these RV stands that I've been using basically everywhere on this project, and a length of wood. Nothing too exciting, just a furring strip essentially across just to distribute the weight, and took a 4-foot level, the same one I've been using, just to make sure that things were lined up, and that let me adjust at a couple of points where the bends were to make sure this was level and pressed down, and pretty happy. That was a lot simpler than the clamps that I used on the other side. So yeah, everything's welded in. It's getting later into the afternoon. I'm going to start going on at least where the bottom of the toe boards are. Man, look at all that dust. And probably weld up to the tunnel on both sides. And we'll see if I wind up doing anything else tonight. That might be something for another time. All right, if you're still with me, thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy this video and want to let the algorithm know, if you could give it a thumbs up, that'd be awesome. Moving forward, we're going to start tackling and welding up along the floor supports, the front area there. Hopefully that'll be done pretty soon, and I'm so excited. Thank you so much.